I used to think every family had a room like ours, the small one at the end of the hallway that slowly turns into a storage space no one admits is a storage space. The door stays closed most of the time, but not locked. You pass it every day. You don't go in. And after a while, you stop noticing it's there at all. That room used to be my sister's. Her name was Lila. I still say her name sometimes when I'm alone, just to hear what it sounds like out loud. It always surprises me how normal it sounds, like I'm talking about someone who might walk through the front door any second, complaining about traffic or asking what's for dinner. But Lila hasn't walked through any door in 13 years. And the strangest part is, we don't talk about it. Not really. Growing up, Lila and I shared everything. Not in the cute movie way where sisters braid each other's hair and whisper secrets under the covers. We fought constantly. We borrowed clothes without asking. We slammed doors. But underneath all of it, there was this invisible thread tying us together. She was 2 years older, which meant she did everything first. First heartbreak, first job, first time sneaking out. I watched her like she was a preview of my own life. She had this laugh that came out in bursts, loud and sudden, like she couldn't hold it in. Mom used to tell her to be quieter, especially in public. Lila never listened. Our house smelled like coffee and laundry detergent most mornings. Dad would already be at work. Mom would stand by the sink, staring out the window like she was waiting for something to happen in the backyard. Lila would sit at the kitchen table, one leg tucked under her, scrolling on her phone, pretending not to be late for school. That's how I remember things. Ordinary, predictable. If you had asked me then what my biggest worry was, I probably would have said a math test, or whether a boy liked me back. I didn't know how quickly normal could disappear. The first time I felt something was off, it was so small I almost ignored it. Lila had started coming home later than usual. Not crazy late, just later. Dinner would be cold by the time she walked in. Mom would ask where she'd been, trying to sound casual, but her voice always had this tight edge. Out, Lila would say, dropping her bag by the door. With who? Friends. What friends? Layla would sigh like the question itself was offensive. Mom, I'm not 5. I'd watch from the couch, pretending to be focused on the TV, but really listening to every word. There was something different about her. She wasn't just annoyed. She seemed far away, like part of her was already somewhere else. One night, I knocked on her door. She didn't answer right away. When she finally said, yeah, her voice sounded thick, like she'd been crying or sleeping. Her room smelled different, not like her usual vanilla body spray. Something sharper, metallic almost. You okay? I asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. She nodded too fast. Yeah, just tired. Her eyes looked glassy, red around the edges. You've been weird, I said, trying to make it sound like a joke. She looked at me for a long time, and I remember this part so clearly it still makes my chest tight. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something important, something big. Then she just shook her head. Go do your homework, she said softly. That was the last real conversation we ever had. The day she disappeared started like any other. That's what haunts me the most. Nothing dramatic, no warning music, no sense that the world was about to tilt. I was brushing my teeth when she knocked on the bathroom door. Hurry up, she said. I'm late. You're always late, I mumbled, toothpaste foaming in my mouth. She laughed, that loud, burst laugh, the one Mom hated. I opened the door and she squeezed past me, bumping my shoulder on purpose. Love you, loser. I rolled my eyes. Shut up. Those were the last words we said to each other. She left for school. She never came home. At first, no one panicked. She'd stayed out late before. Maybe she was at a friend's. Maybe her phone died. Mom called around that evening, her voice getting tighter with each conversation. No, she's not there? Okay, thank you. Dad came home early. I'd never seen him move so fast, pacing the living room, running his hands through his hair. By midnight, the police were there. Flashlights, notepads, questions. What was she wearing? Did she seem upset? Any recent changes in behavior? I sat on the stairs, hugging my knees, listening. My heart felt like it was beating in my throat. Yes, I wanted to say. Something was wrong. I could feel it. But I didn't know what that something was. And somehow, that made it feel like it didn't count. Days turned into weeks. Her face was everywhere. On flyers, on the news, on the front lawn sign Dad hammered into the ground with shaking hands, missing. Every time the phone rang, Mom would freeze. Sometimes she'd whisper, "Please," before answering. Most calls led nowhere. Tips that fell apart. Sightings that weren't her. I started sleeping with her hoodie wrapped around me because it still smelled like her shampoo. I'd close my eyes and try to remember the sound of her voice, terrified it would fade. And slowly something else happened. People stopped asking. The news moved on. The flyers peeled in the rain. The police called less often. Their voices got gentler but also more distant. Like they were preparing us for an ending they weren't saying out loud. Inside the house, it got quieter. Mom stopped going into Lila's room. She'd stand in the hallway sometimes, just looking at the door, then walk away. Dad threw himself into work. He'd come home late, eat in silence, and go straight to bed. One night at dinner, I said her name. Do you think Mom's fork clattered onto her plate. Not at the table, she said sharply. We never tried again. It was like Lila had become a fragile object we might break just by talking about her. So we learned not to. Years passed. I grew up. I went to college. I moved out. But every time I visited, that room at the end of the hallway was still there. Door closed, air heavy. The turning point came on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was 27. Dad had passed away the year before, heart attack. Quick, quiet. Mom asked me to help clear out some boxes in the attic. We worked in silence, dust floating in the sunlight, the air thick and stale. I found an old shoebox tucked behind a stack of winter blankets. It had Lila's name on it in Mom's handwriting. Mom! I called down the ladder. What's this? She went very still below me. Just old stuff. I opened it anyway. Inside were letters, folded pieces of paper, some torn from notebooks, some on stationery, all in Lila's handwriting. My hands started shaking. Mom, I said again, my voice smaller. She climbed up slowly. When she saw the box open in my lap, her face drained of color. You weren't supposed to find that, she whispered. I read the first letter right there in the attic, dust in my throat, heart pounding. It wasn't addressed to us. It was addressed to someone named Erin. She wrote about feeling trapped, about not being able to breathe in our house, about fights with Dad I never knew about, screaming matches late at night, about control, about who she was allowed to see, where she was allowed to go. She wrote, I don't think they see me as a person. I'm just their idea of a daughter. There were more letters, plans, fragments of a future somewhere else, a different city, a job lined up through someone Erin knew. She didn't just vanish, I said slowly. She left. Mom sat down hard on the attic floor. We hoped she'd come back, she said, her voice breaking. At first, we told the police everything about the boy, the fights. But after months, years, nothing, no word. And your father, she stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. What? I pushed. What about Dad? He found out she'd been saving money. He said if she wanted to leave so badly, then let her. He was angry, hurt. He said we should stop chasing someone who didn't want to be found. My chest felt hollow. So you just stopped. Tears slid down her face. I couldn't keep living in that moment, waiting. I thought if we didn't talk about it, maybe it would hurt less. But it didn't hurt less. It just grew roots. For months after that, I couldn't sleep. I kept rereading the letters, looking for clues. There was no last message, no goodbye to me. That part broke me the most. Did she think I wouldn't understand? Or did she not think of me at all? I tracked down Aaron. It took time, social media searches, old school contacts. When I finally found him, he was living 3 states away, married, 2 kids. We met at a coffee shop. He looked at me and immediately knew who I was. His eyes filled with something like guilt. She made it, he said before I could even sit down. She left. She was scared, but she was determined. Where is she? My voice sounded desperate, even to me. He shook his head. We lost touch after a couple years. She moved again, said she needed a fresh start. She didn't want her old life finding her. Her old life, I repeated. He leaned forward. She loved you. She talked about you all the time, but she thought if she reached out, she'd get pulled back. She needed a clean break. I walked out of that cafe feeling like I'd been split in 2. Relief that she might be alive. Grief that she chose a world without us, without me. I still don't know where she is. Maybe she has kids. Maybe she tells them about a little sister who used to steal her sweaters. Maybe she doesn't. What I do know is this: disappearance isn't always a single moment. Sometimes it's a slow fading, a series of choices, a silence that grows so big it swallows everything. Mom and I talk about her now, not every day, but sometimes. We say her name out loud. We open the door to that room. The air doesn't feel as heavy anymore. I keep one of her letters in my drawer, not the painful ones. One where she wrote, "I want to feel like my life belongs to me." For years, I thought of my sister as a victim, a mystery, a tragedy. Now I think of her as a person who ran toward something, not just away. It still hurts. I still wish she had taken me with her, or at least left a note with my name on it. But when I say Lila now, it doesn't feel like a ghost. It feels like someone out there, under the same sky, breathing. And somehow, that's enough for me to finally let the door stay open.